Good evening, and welcome to the November 12th, 2025 joint special hybrid meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission and Open Space Conservancy Trust. Time is now 5:01. We are in session. I am Ashley Hay, Parks and Recreation Commission Chair. Open Space Conservancy Trust Chair Hillary Atay is co-chairing tonight's meeting with me remotely. Tonight's hybrid joint meeting is in person at the Mercer Island Community and Events Center, and we are also using video conferencing technology provided by Zoom. The Zoom video of this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to the city's YouTube channel later this week. Welcome to all, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Trustees who are attending remotely, please have your microphones turned on for the roll call. Will the city staff please call the roll for the Open Space Conservancy Trust?
Thank you, Chair Tay. Trustee Poor. Trustee Hildebrand.
Here.
Trustee and Council Liaison Becker.
Here.
Trustee Gasper. Secretary Bender. Vice Chair Brissett.
Here.
Chair Tay.
Here.
Thank you, Chair.
Parks and Recreation Commissioners, please have your microphones turned on for the roll call. Will the city staff please call the roll for the Parks and Recreation Commission?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Cohen.
Here.
Commissioner Markson.
Here.
Commissioner Struck.
Here.
Commissioner McCarthy.
Here.
Commissioner Bretman.
Here.
Vice Chair Westberg.
Here.
Chair Hay.
Here.
Thank you, Chair.
For this hybrid meeting, Chair Atay and I will do our best to recognize you in the order in which hands are raised. After being recognized, you may then ask your question. And Raven, if you see David's hand up, thanks for flagging us if we miss you there. Our first item of business is public appearances. This is the opportunity for anyone to speak to the Commission and Trust about any item, except items requiring a public hearing, any quasi-judicial matters or campaign-related matters. City staff, is there anyone who has signed up for appearances that wishes to address the Commission and Trust?
Yes, Chair, we have two individuals signed up to speak. I'm not sure if they're in the room. Debbie Gerstel and Norma Berquist. Right here, perfect. Are you Debbie Gerstel? Thank you. And you're Norma Berquist. So we have two in person, Chair.
Great. All right, thank you. Individuals wishing to speak live during the appearances portion of our meeting may do so by telephone, via Zoom, or in person at Mercer Island Community and Events Center, provided they registered their desire to speak with the city admin staff by 4 p.m. today. Our city admin staff will call on you by name or telephone number when it is your turn to speak. This is the opportunity for anyone to speak to the Parks and Recreation Commission and Open Space Conservancy Trust. All remarks will be addressed to the group as a whole and not to individual commission, trustees, or staff members. If any person makes personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks, or who becomes boisterous, threatening, or personally abusive while addressing the group, you may be asked to leave the meeting. Please speak audibly and state your name and city of residence for record. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Staff will provide you with a 10-second notice when your time is about to expire. When your time has ended, I will thank you for your comments and move to the next speaker or item of business. City staff, please admit the first speaker.
Thank you, Chair. Debbie Gerstel.
Hi, my name is Debbie Gerstel. What is my address, right? 2937 74th Avenue. So thank you for hosting this special session to address a topic that is so very important to our community. As you know, the e-bike rules on Mercer Island are not yet comprehensive, and ones that we have aren't clear. This confusion is putting a lot of people at risk. We need clear, consistent rules for e-bike usage. We need visible signage to communicate those rules. This is so important because without the signage, cyclists feel like they have the license to ride wherever they want. And third, We need enforcement that protects everyone. This isn't about blaming kids or cyclists. In fact, I actually want to buy a bike soon. It's about protecting them. Many of the risky behaviors that we see from middle schoolers who simply don't know the rules of the road. And without clear rules, signage, education, or enforcement, how can we expect them to? Whether it's because kids are doing pop wheelies on 24th Street, or they're riding through the grassy area at Mercer Park, even when there's an incident, the kid, the driver, the pedestrian will all be traumatized, to say the least. I dread the day I read about it. People, and also dogs, are in danger because kids are on e-bikes or zipping through places they shouldn't be, and or at speeds that they shouldn't be. Personally, I've experienced issues as a pedestrian in Mercer Park with my dog, and with 3 kids, spoke there. Personally, I've experienced issues as a pedestrian in Mercer Park, and with my 20-pound dog at Mercer and 3 kids on e-bikes came flying through the grassy fields and almost hit her, terrifying both of us. I've also been walking on the small trail from First Hill down to the Neo Poster, which I believe is called Mercerdale Hillside Park, and the kid almost hit us. I've never in 10 years of walking that trail about twice a day seen a bicycle come through that narrow dirt trail, and now e-bikes are going on it. And I will also know that there are stairs at the bottom of that trail, so they're literally riding up those stairs. The e-bike community has clearly evolved faster than the city rules and signage in our parks. In Medina, I'm sure you know this, there are signs that read, e-bikes are not allowed in any of Medina's parks, regardless of where the motor is engaged, whether the motor is engaged. This is because e-bikes can cause more damage to park landscaping due to their increased weight and tire width. If that rationale is needed on Mercer Island to stop e-bikes from zipping through our parks, I'm all for it. I realize we're not the only city with this problem, but we're a small, tight-knit community and should be able to act quickly. At a minimum, the city should put up signage in parks indicating where e-bikes can ride, and certainly where they can't. It's only a matter of time before there's a tragedy on Mercer Island. I beg you to do something about it. Again, 1, we need rules. 2, we need signage and education. And 3, we need enforcement. My remaining time, I don't know where my remaining time is. How much time do I have?
21 seconds.
Okay. I'll share just a couple of comments that I read on Facebook. 1, I've stopped walking at Mercerdale, either by myself or with my dog. It's too risky, no longer pleasant and relaxing. You have to be constantly on high alert for e-bikes who zoom by. I've never been hit twice. 2, on the south,
5 seconds.
racing up. I'd say over 40 miles per hour on clock. So 40 miles per hour. Near and in the middle school. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Will city staff please call the next appearance?
Thank you, Chair. Norma Berquist.
Hi, I'm Norma Birchquist, 3429 74th Avenue Southeast. We've seen the increased use of e-bikes. I support completely what Devin says. I've seen a few kids obeying the rules of the road, but most of the kids, even when asked to slow down or to be careful, have done nothing but speed up and hurl swear words. Meaning, I can think that from Chicago, but what I can't handle is the fact that they don't think about the wider group of people. You know, we're an island that that believes and knows that we're a community. We see ourselves as a community. We have some of the most beautiful parks I've ever seen. I'm from Chicago originally. We don't have these kinds of parks. In order to maintain this beauty that we have, this incredible, I mean, I can walk out of my house and be in a park completely surrounded by trees. I don't want to have to worry about being mowed down by a kid. And I'm not saying that as if something might happen. I've seen it happen. A kid came flying by at 40 miles an hour, going through a four-way stop sign. Luckily, there were no cars or no people that came by. And when we asked him to stop, he did nothing but hurl swear words at us. Again, this is not showing any kind of respect for anybody on the road. I'm worried that somebody is going to be hurt. I'm worried that somebody might be hurt. So if these kids want to be able to have a place where they can freely deal with their e-bikes and have fun, maybe we can do something out there back in the house. We can figure out in a contained area, but we don't need to have them in our parks or on our trails, especially with the amount of money it also going to cost us to repair them. I think we've seen examples of that already. Thank you.
Are there any further appearances?
No further appearances, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further appearances, we will now move to regular business.
Chair Tay, I think your microphone is not on.
Pardon me. The only item of regular business is the e-bike regulations study session. Welcome Management Analyst Amelia Chaden.
Good evening. I'm not Amelia, as you may know. I'm Ryan Daly, Recreation Manager. While Amelia's getting set up, I do just want to go over a couple logistical items for this meeting. Really what we're looking for or where we're going staff-wise. I think the first thing, I can't imagine that we're gonna walk out of this room tonight with e-bike regulation. But what I do and what we're hoping for is a lot of discussion so the staff can go back, start the development of those regulations for future meetings. Probably anticipating at least 1 or 2 more meetings to discuss what those regulations would be for a recommendation to go forward to City Council. Couple other things, you'll notice we don't have microphones in front of all of you, but we have this really awesome spaceship above us that captures all of the sound within this room, including the audience. So just a heads up that everything in this room is essentially recorded. Chair Atay, can you hear my voice? Can you hear, how did it sound for everybody in this room on your end?
The sound quality is great. Thank you for checking, Ryan.
Perfect, awesome. So with that, I will hand it over to Amelia and she will lead us through the presentation and I'll be back.
Thank you, Ryan. With the not having a microphone, if you can't hear me, if my voice starts to get quiet, please just wave at me or give me like a pointing up so that I know. Good evening, everyone. Amelia Chaden, Management Analyst. Thank you for being here tonight. I will guide us through a large chunk of tonight's presentation on e-bike regulations. I'll start us off by defining e-bikes, e-motorcycles, and e-scooters, providing photo examples of all of them, and then showing what their current regulations are. We'll then move into the trail classifications as they exist on Mercer Island, and then the considerations that we should have in mind as we move into our discussion. Before I get into the meat of our presentation, I want to preview the discussion questions that staff put together to help facilitate this conversation, so you can have them in the back of your mind as we move along. The questions that staff came up with regarding e-bikes are: should the city regulate e-bikes differently than regular commuter-powered bikes? Are there places where e-bikes should be prohibited or not allowed? Should e-scooters be regulated differently than e-bikes or at all? Are there classes of e-bikes that should not be permitted on parks or in parks or on trails? And then finally, are there certain parks or locations that we should designate as bike-free and pedestrian? So with that, I'm going to start a presentation this evening walking through the work that has already been completed on e-motorcycles. So in September of this year, the City Council adopted ordinance number 25C-24, regulating electric motorcycles, or as I'm going to call them, e-motorcycles. Under the ordinance, an e-motorcycle is defined as a motorcycle that is powered by an electric motor and is not equipped with fully operable pedals capable of propelling it, or has a motor with a power output that exceeds 750 watts, or has a motor that continues to provide assistance when the vehicle reaches the speed of 28 miles per hour, meaning it will accelerate past 28 miles per hour. The photos that you see on screen are examples of e-motorcycles, though they may not be marketed as such. As you can tell, this Florida State is marketed as an electric dirt bike, but it has a 6,000 watt motor and a top speed of 47 miles per hour. On the right, we have the EK-X21 off-road e-bike, which has a 3,000 watt motor and a top speed of 45 miles per hour. Another vehicle that would meet the definition of an e-motorcycle is the Tutio ARC-1, which is pictured on the left. While this vehicle has a 750 watt motor and a top speed of 22 miles per hour, it does not have operable pedals, so it is powered solely by a throttle, therefore meeting the category of an e-motorcycle. On the right, we have a modified class 2 e-bike, which according to the owner has an 8,000 watt motor and a top speed of 47 miles per hour. So while this bike started as a legal class 2 e-bike, it's been modified to now be considered an electric motorcycle. To really hammer home this point, under the ordinance, traditional electric motorcycles like the Harley Davidson or the Zero that you see on the screen are also e-motorcycles and are subject to the same regulations under the ordinance. Under the ordinance, e-motorcycles are not allowed on any sidewalk, pedestrian path, or within public parks except along parking areas or roads. And then to operate an e-motorcycle, the operator must have a valid driver's license with a motorcycle endorsement, and the e-motorcycle must have a valid license plate. These regulations will go into effect on January 1 of next year. So now moving into e-bikes, under state law, an e-bike or an electric assisted bicycle is a bicycle with 2 or 3 wheels. It has a saddle, it has fully operable pedals, and it has an electric motor whose power output would not exceed 750 watts. There are 3 classes of e-bikes that are distinguished by the maximum assisted speed and how the assistance is provided. Class 1 and Class 2 e-bikes have either a pedal assist or a throttle, and the motor provides assistance up to 20 miles per hour. While a Class 3 bike could have both the pedal assist and the throttle, or one or the other, and has a maximum assisted speed of 28 miles per hour. When we're talking about the maximum assisted speed, it's important to note that the vehicle may be able to go faster than either 20 or 28 miles per hour. Like, let's say you're riding down a hill and you reach 22 or 30 miles per hour, but at 20 or 28 miles per hour, the vehicle stops powering the motor so that it is either human powered or gravity. Under state law, Class 1 and Class 2 e-bikes can go anywhere traditional human-powered bikes can go, rather than vehicles that are designated as non-motorized, like the skate park or the bike skills area. Class 3 e-bikes are only allowed on roads and paved trails, importantly not allowed on soft surface trails, sidewalks, or on shared use paths. E-scooters are classified in state law as motorized foot scooters, meaning they have 2 or 3 wheels, handlebars, a floorboard, and a motor. And importantly, a lawful e-scooter will have a maximum speed of 20 miles per hour, though they have an operational speed of 50. The photos on screen are of personal e-scooters, but it's important to note that any regulations involving motorized foot scooters would also apply to shared scooters like electric scooters should they arrive. E-scooters have many of the same regulations as e-bikes, however, they cannot be ridden on sidewalks or soft surface trails unless designated so by a city ordinance. And riders must also be 16 years old to operate an e-scooter. Title 9 of the Mercer Island City Code establishes the rules for operating motor vehicles in parks. I'm going to read this slide to you, but importantly, many vehicles are prohibited from operating park areas outside of parking areas or roads. State law says that e-bikes and e-scooters cannot be ridden on trails marked as non-motorized and trails with a natural dirt surface, meaning e-bikes and e-scooters are not allowed in Pioneer Park, Upper Burbank Park, Island Crest Ravine, and anywhere designated as non-motorized. That said, state law also allows the city to permit the operation of e-bikes and e-scooters on these trails or to further restrict the use. Many jurisdictions in King County have adopted local regulations for e-bikes and e-scooters, as well as other motorized transportation devices. For example, King County has sustained rules for Class 1 and Class 2 e-bikes versus Class 3 e-bikes. The city of Everett prohibits all e-bikes and e-scooters from parks except in areas like parking lots. And the city of North Bend placed restrictions solely on Class 3 e-bikes. Other cities with these regulations include cities of Sammamish, Snoqualmie, and the city of In regards to open spaces, the city has guidelines that restrict motorized vehicles, including e-scooters and motorcycles. Under the guidelines, pedestrians and human-powered bicyclists are allowed on all soft surface trails unless otherwise posted. Community members are asked to call 911 when witnessing unsafe or illegal behaviors involving e-bikes, e-scooters, and e-motorcycles. Calling 911 is the fastest way to deploy law enforcement to an incident and to stop these behaviors as they are happening. The community has been very active in reporting concerns with these vehicles. The city has received reports of e-bikes and e-scooters operating in the skate park, these vehicles racing around the sidewalks at Mercerdale, and finally, these vehicles riding across athletic field, which has an impact on the reservation groups. When feasible, the police department will attempt to contact the youths riding these vehicles, and if warranted, the police will call their parents to retrieve the vehicle and to pick up their child. I'm gonna go take a sip of water. Move forward with the inches here of statements.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? In the materials that were sent out to us, it indicated that class 3 e-bikes have an age minimum of 16 years old as well. Is that? Okay, so you need to be 16 in order to operate in class 3.
Thank you for that question.
Gary, I'm noticing that we're having questions from the audience. Generally, we don't accept questions from the audience. This is a focused study session.
But if anyone has questions and want to submit them by email, that would be.
Yes, absolutely. Sure.
Yeah, Councilmember Reynolds.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick question. I should know this, but I don't. A class 3 or 2, looking at a class 3 e-bike as it goes by, can you tell the difference without close inspection between a 3 and a 2?
So you would likely need closer inspection, but under state law, all e-bikes are required to have a label affixed to the top sheet or near the bottom bracket.
So, but as it rides by, you
But
could,
as it
wouldn't be able
rides
to tell.
by, you would have to have a more in-depth knowledge of e-bikes.
Okay, that's what I thought, wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to classifications. The first plan divides our trails into different classes, with some trails accommodating more traffic and vacuum, and other trails relying on local streets and sidewalks to create linkages. The first type of trail we will discuss is shared use paved trails. These trails provide various connections across the island and even with other cities. These trails have a minimum of 10-foot width and are paved trails that are used primarily by pedestrians, bicyclists, and people with wheeled bicycles. Next, we have neighborhood link trails that connect open spaces, parks, and more with neighborhoods. These trails could be soft or hard surface and vary in their width. Neighborhood links are designed to be non-motorized and are used by walkers, bikers, hikers, and equestrians. This brings us to natural surface trails that connect the community with natural areas. These trails may connect to other paved trails, but are typically used by hikers, walkers, and mountain bikers. And finally, we have park trails, which allow for access and circulation within park facilities, including sidewalks, paths, and other trails. I would be remiss if I didn't add other aspects to consider into the mix. So starting off, when thinking about where e-bikes could be permitted, sense of safety, trail width, passing areas, and maximum speeds should all be considered. In comparison with human-powered bikes, e-bikes are faster and have a higher torque, thus have a greater impact on other trail users. The speed and weight of e-bikes could also have environmental impacts. On one hand, e-bikes provide a mobility tool that can get people back onto their bike if they're no longer able to ride a human-powered bike, or allow them to go further than previously possible. E-bikes can be incredibly helpful when riding in hilly areas and allow riders to cover more ground. E-bikes are used for both leisure and for commuting and can provide an alternative to car travel. On the other hand, e-bikes can also create major conflict with people using mobility devices and other users due to their privacy. One option to address these conflicts is to designate certain trails as walking only, but including mobility devices. In other words, e-bikes, e-scooters, and human-powered bikes would not be allowed on walking only trails. As I'm sure you're aware of, the Sound Transit Light Rail Station is anticipated to open next year. Staff anticipate an increased need for connection around the island to get community members to and from the station. The island's vast trail system will be pivotal in ensuring these connections. E-bikes are micromobility tools that are accessible and often an inexpensive alternative to all car travel that commuters can use to reach the station. Following this meeting, staff will take all of the feedback and input from this discussion and create a policy statement. This group will meet again, and Ryan goes earlier that to take it 4 times. But at which point staff will return to finalize this policy statement and present recommendations for its implementation. And once finalized, staff will integrate this feedback into an ordinance to be presented to the city council for consideration. And a quick pause and see if there are any questions on the slides that I have presented thus far.
Thank you, Amelia. And Trustee Atay, we're not able to see anybody online, so if anyone has a hand up, please feel free to call on them.
At this time, I don't see any hands.
Okay, do we have any questions? Commissioner Struck?
You mentioned that the, I think the class 3 has a licensing requirement.
Class 3 does not have a.
Oh, excuse me, class. It was
Age requirement.
Age requirement. It's, you have to be
Okay.
16, you do not have to have a license.
Excuse me, I was thinking more of registration in terms of like a license plate.
Class 3 does not need.
So none of the bikes require it.
None of the e-bikes require registration. An e-motorcycle would require.
Okay, e-motorcycle. Okay, so none of them at this point require it. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Reynolds?
So you went through the 4 classes of trails. Are all the trails on the island officially designated on maps or elsewhere as one of those classes, or is it just kind of more of a generic guideline that people might disagree on?
There goes when, more or less.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Because I noticed like there were 2 groups, I forget which, the neighborhood link trails and the natural surface trails and the park trails, all of those might be natural surface, right? So it's a judgment call that somebody has to make on which one they're considered, right? Okay.
Commissioner Bratton?
Do non-motorized bicycles have any speed limits within parks? Are there any limits placed on them?
There are not. No, we don't have speed limits.
On the other hand, there's a countywide regulation that the maximum speed of a human powered cycle on a shared use path is 15 miles per hour.
Could you go over what the current regulation is on the island as far as bicycles in parks? I'm not about e-bikes, I'm just talking about bicycles. But it seems fairly restrictive. And
It is, yes, Amelia's cutting to the slide right now. Basically, bicycles per the park rules within the city code are managed very similar to every other vehicle. Meaning that they need to be only in designated areas. We don't, now I'll add to that. Our park system doesn't have designated areas that they're necessarily allowed. So to the point on signage and things like that in the parks, that's not necessarily there unless it's what we consider a special amenity, and that would be, or a special park facility like a skate park, the bike skills area, a playground could be that, athletic fields could fall into that as well. That oftentimes we add additional rules or regulations around how those sites or what's permitted to be used in those specific locations.
so there is a rule in place, but it is not well defined necessarily on the ground.
Correct. And this is the park rule right here, regarding vehicles. the Parks Commission will recall in December, we were going to start talking about the Parks Code as a whole. That work has been pushed off a bit, partially or in conjunction with the conversations we're gonna have about e-bikes over the next couple of months to then inform updates to the park rules, as they're written in the code.
Vice Chair Brisseth has a question. You're muted, Carolyn.
I just had one comment. It's kind of a minor point. I participate in the community garden. It's up above the community center. And, there is currently a prohibition for the gardeners to use motorized vehicles going up into that area. But what I want to point out is that is a place that is of temptation to bikers, and many of the gardeners, because we're prohibited to use vehicles to bring supplies up there. We're limited to using wheelbarrows, and there are a number of us that may be weighted down or may be carrying large packages of soil or plants or whatever that we're taking up to that area. And I think I think it's unique in the sense that it may not fit into some of the definitions that have been shown to us, but I think it is one where we need to take some care about protecting some of the folks who are using that particular. It's a short pathway, it just goes up from the parking lot up to where the community gardens are, but it's very steep. And it's hard to negotiate the wheelbarrows or large packages that we're carrying as we go up that area.
I think Councilmember Becker had a question, and then I see Jody.
Let me see if I can put my.
Yeah, I'm just curious, using the skate park as a specific example that we've called out where it's already not allowed. And it feels like we get a decent number of complaints from people seeing them there that we can decide what is legal and what isn't legal, but I'm curious what the enforcement challenges are if it's already illegal. I believe it's already signed as non-motorized. So what could we do to make it easier to enforce in areas where it's already not allowed and we don't appear to be able to enforce it?
Sam, do you want to touch on the skate park specifically?
I would say that's an example where the signage isn't updated to accommodate e-bikes, and it's a little bit confusing.
Okay.
Yeah, I would add to that sign is interesting. We were just actually in my office talking about it. The sign at the skate park says what you're allowed to do, not what you're not allowed to do, if that makes sense. So rollerblade, I can't remember what they all were.
Scooter, skateboard, rollerblade.
Yeah, but it doesn't say you can't.
Okay.
Put a bike on there, and for us, that might be one of those opportunities to enhance signage to be more specific to the behaviors we want to eliminate.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McCarthy?
Thank you. Building on that part of the conversation, it seems to me like we have a lot of rules already, potentially putting them all together, but also it feels like a big part is educating everybody in the community about the rules, and also especially going into like the middle school and high school and explaining the responsibilities of having either an e-bike or an e-scooter, or even just being on a regular bike. I think in third grade, they have the bike rodeo where they practice the skills, and perhaps there needs to be a refresher. Because I think we all anecdotally have seen the kids whizzing by on their electric scooters or their electric bikes. And we all forget maybe what the rules should be sometimes. So I think that should be a part of this whole thing, is also including educating the parents and the kids about what is expected on the road and on the trails when you have this power. Thanks.
Just to speak to that a little bit, and with the work that was being done on e-motorcycles, the city has conducted a pretty robust public outreach and education campaign. More geared towards safety on e-motorcycles and distinguishing between e-bikes and e-motorcycles. But earlier this year in April, the Mercer Island Police Department, in coordination with the school district, presented an assembly to all middle schoolers about e-bike and bike safety, as well as the e-motorcycles. This was accompanied by a mailer that went out to all middle school parents, explaining what the vehicles are and what the rules are. So I appreciate your comment on education, and I will make sure that gets my.
Thank you.
Commissioner Strack.
Just a question, in terms of definition. So we talk about a park. Are we talking specifically about the pros plan inventory, or are we talking about the park zone? Because those are not the same. Specifically, Aubrey Davis is not part of the park zone, although it's park managed. So you need to, at some point, have to, if you're gonna write a rule, you're gonna have to define park.
Staff's intent is facilities managed by the city. So
Okay.
parts as they're laid out in a pros plan.
Thank you.
Yeah, which is a solid inventory.
Commissioner Bretton.
Not sure now is the time to ask this question. It wasn't specifically about things in the PowerPoint, but it's related to this issue. Can I ask now? Okay, it's kind of following up on the question that Councilmember Becker asked around enforcement. I just have a few questions. So are police able to actually even check the bikes? Like, can they do a radar? Does a radar work for police?
That's a great question. The radar gun does work, but you would have to be out there and have a way to protect them and then stop them. Which I do not believe our police department has done, but the King County Sheriff's Office has on trails.
Okay.
Enforced specifically.
Right, okay. I just didn't even know if you could catch the bike. So, and then are there any recommendations from our police department regarding policies that can be enforced more effectively, or policies that are difficult to enforce? I'm sure you all are talking to the police department, because, and it would make sense to try to adopt policies that are capable of enforcing. Yeah.
So I love talking. I can't get away from it. Everybody laughs at this table here because they know. I will say, we've been talking the enforcement side as well at length. I'm sure that's something that pops into everybody's head immediately, like, how are we going to do this? What our intent is to work through this meeting at a high level to get an idea of what we want to see, if that kind of makes sense. Our intention is at the next meeting that PD would be attending and helping to inform on what you're talking about, of how does that work? How do different policies shape the way enforcement is possible? And also what's challenging, the question on how do we identify the difference between types of e-bikes? That's a great one. That's if you're in the field, if any of us are out, class one, it's gonna be really challenging to know. So that's something, bringing the police department into the conversation, they'll be able to provide some input toward that. So step 2, more than likely for our conversation.
Great, thank you.
It looks like Vice Chair Carolyn Brisseth has another question.
Yeah, thank you. And it's really to follow up on Ryan's comments, and that I think that part of the complexity here is what makes this difficult. You know, when we talk about rules for drivers, a car is a car is a car, right? And I think with all these classifications of different electrified vehicles, you know, I think most folks, when they start hearing information about this, their eyes glaze over. And I think the other issue is that we've got lots of definitions of what these various trails or parkways or walkways are. And I think it's the same issue. So I would urge, as we go forward with this, that we have an air of simplicity, because if part of what we intend to do is to educate, I think we need to have a very simple and clear message, because unless one owns a bike or one of these electric bikes, you know, they don't have a lot of self-interest in trying to understand this. So I think simplicity has to be an important piece of this.
Thank you, Vice Chair Brisseth. It looks like Commissioner McCarthy and then Commissioner Markson also have questions. Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you. I was just wondering, so just because the bike can be electrically assisted, does that mean that it has to be using the electrical all the time? Or can we, like, is there a way to say, if you're in the park, if you're on an e-bike, you have to be using the pedals and be minimally assisted to keep your speed down? Is that a thing? I don't have an e-bike, so I don't have any concept of how they work. Like, do you have to have that on, or can you just be pedaling?
Yeah, great question. So all e-bikes, all lawful e-bikes will have operational pedals. So let's say your battery's dead, you would be able to pedal that very, very heavy bike, just like a normal human powered bike. You also have the opportunity or the ability to turn off the power. So you could, in theory, treat your bike like an analog human powered bike. It just might not be the most fun.
Thank you.
Commissioner Markson.
Hi, thank you. This is Commissioner Markson. I really appreciated Carolyn Bursett's comments. I think I've been trying to gather in my head, like, well, what is the real difference between, like, where do you draw the line between a regular bike to a class 1 to a class 2 to a class 3, you know, in this whole gradation of types of vehicles, what they are. And that question that you asked, like, should e-bikes be regulated differently than bikes? I feel like it's really not, it would be so complex to try and draw the line and then enforce it if you try to distinguish between the various bikes. And keeping it simple as much as possible. And when I think of that, I think of it like, what are the things that we're concerned about with these bikes? And it seems we're concerned about danger to people on the trail who may be at slower speeds, and we're concerned about damage to the park. And the way that you can prevent that in a simplest way is through speed control, as opposed to the vehicle itself. I recognize it's not it's obviously difficult to enforce someone's speed in a park. But as you mentioned, that's a different question. But in my mind, I'm having a hard time deciding where that line would be and how you would enforce the line. So that's where enforcing the speed seems like a more maintainable future approach. Thanks.
A hand on this, Commissioner Cohen.
Yeah, this is Don Cohen. When I was reading over this stuff, I was writing down all of these different things that everybody else was, location, type of trail, speed limit, class of bike, trail surface, time of day or week, age, whether a test should be required, whether helmets should be required. And then one thing that kept coming out to me was this question about should whichever, let's say class 1 and 2, should they be permitted unless prohibited, or should they be prohibited unless permitted? You can imagine what my initial inclination would be, even though, I need to think a lot more about this, because I don't ride e-bikes and I don't want to put people at risk, and I don't want to put the environment at risk. And I know that, this whole subject, this comes up every single time we have something like this. Everybody has the right to use community facilities, but so I don't know. I'm not sure where I'm headed on this. My other point is that I would not resist making reasonable regulations or prohibitions because of difficulty of enforcement. I know that always comes up, and that sometimes it comes up not necessarily in this context, comes up because people don't want to have regulation, and so, well, how are we going to enforce it? But I would not be deterred from, and I think this is sort of consistent with what Brian was saying, I would not be deterred from figuring out what makes sense, would not be deterred by the enforcement issues, at least at this stage. So it's kind of stream of consciousness, but I'm struggling the same way that other people have.
So these are some great general questions and comments. If we don't have any other questions about the presentation, do we want to start to tackle some of these questions?
Yeah, I think we have just a couple more slides, if I recall. If we want to go through, finish that, wrap that up, and then I think that's a great segue into the actual discussion questions and see where we get. Ooh, we might be here all night.
There we go.
Okay, so we'd already talked about the discussion questions. We will come back to these on individual slides. Amelia already talked about them, but I want to highlight, and I think this group has probably already highlighted some of the examples. So we have a number of park facilities that we want to call out, and just this is more for thought provocation, just to move us forward in the conversation. So Aubrey Davis Trail, the question came up. It's not in the park zone. But it is a park, as we often recognize, so that would be something e-bike regulations would play a role in. Aubrey Davis Trail, part of the I-90 corridor, connects multiple cities, including running right through the middle of ours. Aubrey Davis Park has diverse uses, so thinking about the playgrounds, the athletic fields, picnic shelters, different pedestrian facilities. And this trail is rather unique. It's typically somewhere between 8 and 10 feet wide throughout the park, but it also goes in through town center, which includes a portion of sidewalk. So I like to throw in an additional wrinkle for us to think about as we move forward. Island Crest Park, another active park facility. Primarily soft surface trails, narrow trails over a varied topography. The trails connect different locations, so specifically Island Crest Way and West Mercer Way creates a thoroughfare route there. Island Crest Park balances a lot of programmed activities. So as you can imagine, we have the bike skills area, which isn't necessarily programmed, or the Dean's Children's Park that's there, but we do have the athletic field. So we do see a number of kids, even adults, coming to that park with e-bikes to attend practices or activities of those. Luther Burbank Park, you all know it. It's a regional park. Has a mix of paved and soft surface trails. Mixed uses. We have passive and program uses down there. Highly and heavily utilized by dog walkers, as is obviously Aubrey Davis Park as well, and other pedestrians. We see a lot of people just coming to Luther Burbank Park to enjoy the park in different aspects. Tends to be one of the, to see the most crowding in our park system, and what I mean by that is most of our parks don't have the ongoing convergence of people. Luther Burbank absolutely does. You've got a swim beach, you've got pickleball courts, you've got more natural areas. You've got the docks coming online. There's a lot of different aspects to that facility. People oftentimes come to Luther Burbank Park via the I-90 trail as well. So you have people accessing the park through different modes of transportation. Pioneer Park, 6.6 miles of trails, including equestrian trails. Motorized vehicles are prohibited in this park, and pedestrians and bicyclists are allowed on all of the soft surface trails within that park facility. You gonna lead us through the discussion questions?
We're going one by one.
Yes.
Okay.
Any questions, anything to highlight on park facilities? We only named a few, as you can imagine. Our park system, maybe one of the great benefits of our park system is just the diversity of trails, the diversity of activities that happens in there. Like, it's really hard to regulate sometimes. but it is a unique challenge, and so when you think about all of the other parks and open spaces within the park system, those have differing elements, differing types of trails oftentimes within them, but we were focused on highlighting the ones that have the most diversity.
Commissioner Markson's hand up, is that an older hand?
You got some.
Okay, Commissioner Markson, and then I see your hands.
Thank you. I just wondered, I saw that you said Pioneer Park does not allow motorized vehicles. I think that's what it said. And I wondered if you had made any, I guess it wouldn't be an arrest, like stopped anyone for riding motorized vehicles, e-bikes in Pioneer Park. I know I've definitely seen them in there.
Not to my knowledge, I don't believe we are enforced the non-motorized.
I'm sorry, it was kind of muffled for some reason.
To my knowledge, we have not stopped anyone from riding an e-bike.
Okay. Do you ever, people don't ride mopeds, old fashioned gas mopeds, but anything like that in there?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, thanks.
Before we wade into these questions, I just wanted to clarify, and maybe Dr. Reynolds can do this, that as we address these questions, we're talking about bicycles, e-bikes, category 1, category 2, category 3. A lot of the comments that were written and sent into the commission and the public comments that were made tonight address problems with the e-motorcycles that some of our young people are riding fairly carelessly around the streets and through the parks and other places. That problem has been addressed by the ordinance that the council passed, which will put age restrictions, licensing restrictions, and registration restrictions on that type of electric conveyance. So we're talking about bicycles that meet the definition of Cat 1, 2, or 3.
Correct, and just to add to that, in park spaces.
In park spaces.
Yes.
We're not questioning the value of e-bikes in general. We're not questioning the use of e-bikes on streets or on bike shoulders that are designated on the streets or other areas. We're simply looking at what's the impact of e-bikes in park spaces, our parks and open space. And do those need to be regulated? Now, that is not to say that kids aren't racing their e-motorcycles through parks and things like that, but that is going to be addressed, hopefully, when the ordinance kicks in January, and there'll be an enforcement mechanism in place to deal with that problem.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I think if I'm not mistaken, and I see some hands up, that some of the public comments we've received are about all e-bikes in general. And we did get some, especially an email specifically talking about motorcycle.
Yes.
For the purposes of tonight, I think the comments were mixed between motorcycle and class 1, 2, 3, any type of powered bike is that. Yeah.
And it's helpful, just for, the thousands listening at home. How many public comments did we receive? Sometimes people think when we say public comments, it's just the people who came up to the podium, but we did receive 9 emails that were forwarded to both boards as well, that I think Commissioner Westberg was kind of highlighting the some of the narratives that were coming through that.
Certainly not all.
Yeah.
Kind of mixed in terms of the public comment. But for tonight, we're only worried about the e-bikes. We don't need to worry about the e-motorcycles, correct?
Well, that's what I'm suggesting because that issue has been addressed.
Chair Ete.
My question, just to go back to this specific discussion question, is do we know whether e-bikes specifically cause more damage to trails in terms of compaction? Because I think that's a really important issue that goes into if and how e-bikes should be regulated differently than standard manual bikes.
I think anecdotally, we can see examples of that, just because they're heavier, they have more horsepower, they can potentially spin out and, you know, cause ruts and things like that. But I haven't seen a lot of like specific data on that.
Okay, thank you. I'm wondering if we can see if there is anything out there that could come back to our next meeting, if city staff can look into that, or if someone on either one of either the commission or the board wants to look into that, because I think that would be significant, especially on the soft surfaces. And I know that a few people brought up the potential costs to trail maintenance that might result without being mindful about how we regulate e-bike use in open spaces specifically.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to address trustee Ete's inquiry regarding the potential for greater trail damage by e-bikes. I've been working on some e-bikes as a volunteer, and typically since they're heavier, they have a wider diameter tire, which allows the tire to be inflated to a lower pressure. So you expect less soil compaction underneath an e-bike than under a standard 10-speed, for example. However, they also have usually smaller diameter wheels, which means that the torque that they can develop between the wheel and the trail surface is increased. So you could get greater erosion that way, especially if we're talking about the e-motorcycles, which should not be allowed, and that would be another good reason to prohibit them in the parks. Yeah. I also had some comments regarding the classification of bikes that appears in the state, the revised code of Washington. I'm an avid cyclist, and I think that the 750 watt limitation on what can be considered an e-bicycle is quite relevant. 750 watts is approximately equal to 1 horsepower, and a good athlete can develop approximately 1 horsepower. So an unassisted or an e-bike that doesn't require human assist probably has a top speed of around 20 miles an hour, or 20 to 25 miles an hour. That's what I can achieve without any electric assist. If I had 750 watts of electric assist, I could probably get up to 35 miles an hour if I were pedaling for all I'm worth. But if somebody goes by on what looks like a cycle and is doing 40 miles an hour, that's clearly classified as a motorcycle and should be, you know, enforced under the recently passed city regulation.
Yeah, I just want to, hopefully Councilmember Becker will correct me if my memory's wrong on this, or somebody else will, but in response to what Commissioner Westberg said, we passed an ordinance related to motorcycles that did things like requiring that they be licensed, that you be age 16, et cetera. But I don't think we passed anything that explicitly restricted their use of parks. I think if you were 17 and had a properly licensed e-motorcycle, could we write it in parks under that ordinance? Does anyone remember?
We amended the parks code, so it would be included under 9.30.150, the sign that I showed earlier. So it would be one of the prohibited vehicles.
It defines them as as a motorcycle.
Okay, so they're already banned entirely.
They are banned entirely.
Okay,
Yeah, we would look at it the same as if you tried to take your car on the trail.
yes, thank you, I stand corrected.
But just on this question here specifically, regulating e-bikes differently than regular bikes. Is there a feel?
Well, to me, it's not quite a clear cut definition because you have different classes of e-bikes. You may decide, for example, you could decide, for example, that a Cat 1, which requires pedaling, should be regulated the same way as a regular bicycle. Theoretically, you can go faster on them and things like that and climb hills easier, but you still have to pedal it. Whereas with a Cat 2 and a Cat 3, you can operate with a throttle and they're much more powerful. So personally, I could see lumping a Cat 1 with a regular pedal bicycle in terms of the way you decide you want to regulate their use in parks, but potentially exclude Cat 2 and certainly exclude Cat 3.
I had a comment along the same lines. And initially I thought the same thing, that maybe class 1, if they're not pedaling that fast or they don't use the assist, but the key there for me is the power assist and the ability to go 20 miles per hour, whether it's class 1 or 2. And so for this question, I think it's a flat yes. The city should regulate e-bikes differently than other bikes because Pioneer Park, for instance, you can't ride your bicycle very fast through the park. It's bumpy terrain, it's slow going. Whereas a class 1, even if you say, oh, only pedal, don't use the assist, you can blaze through at 20 miles per hour. So to me, class 1, 2, and 3 seem all the same in terms of regulation. I wouldn't say let's allow 1, but not 2 and 3, or 1 and 2, but not 3. And then when comparing to regular bicycles, I think there's a big difference. So I would say yes, regular.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that, like, even people who I know who are, and I'm not saying this is my opinion, but people who are like very proponents of e-bikes think that class 3 e-bikes should be regulated different. Like, I mean, class 3, I mean, you're talking about the speed in some of these and how fast you could bike, but it's like, I mean, the class 2 bike can go 20 miles per hour assisted and class 3 is 28 miles per hour. Like, I don't think anybody is saying you should be able to go 28. I'm not saying we shouldn't let people do 20. I'm just saying, like, the answer to this at a bare minimum is, I think everybody agrees is yes for class 3. The question just is purely around class 1 and 2.
Taking that, I hadn't really thought about starting at the class 3 and thinking about it separately, but to get an idea of where the group is, class 3, if thumbs up, class 3 would go to its own category. If that makes sense. So we would.
I would say Cat 3 is not allowed in parks, period.
Right, I'm not necessarily saying class 3 should be in its own category. You could say all 3 should be banned everywhere. I'm not saying we should allow 1 and 2. I'm just saying
At least,
3, in my opinion, should not be allowed.
Other than paved paths like Aubrey Davis Park. something like that.
Well, I mean, we can kind of work backwards to
Okay.
3 on our way down. I mean, if we're all in agreement.
Would it be appropriate to take a straw poll, and have a show of hands of people who would be in favor of banning class 3 e-bikes in all parks, or generally unless there were some reason why they should be allowed? I've already said that the speed limit on all King County trails is 15, so a bike that can go that fast would still not be allowed to achieve its full speed going on the Mountains to Sound Greenway through the north end of the island. So it would be, well, yeah, could we have a show of hands?
what's the question again now?
The question is just, you raise your hand if you feel that class 3 e-bikes should, generally speaking, be prohibited from all of the parks.
And without conceding that 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Right,
Making it a
just
decision.
class
Not
3.
taking.
We're just starting at the top. We already,
And
the
then
council
it's a
already.
discussion question, right?
It might be.
I didn't mean to circumvent the question. I was just.
All right, have,
Yeah.
And the only thing we're taking away from this is helping us to develop language that you'll look at later at a future date to help inform.
Does WashDOT have the final call with regard to aggregators?
They would need to be,
Yes.
yeah, okay, so that would be a special circumstance.
Wondered about the discussions of Bobby Davis, which is its own.
We're not going back there.
Its own special, right, yes, Commissioner Bratton.
So I'm going back to the question, and I think I'm confused because this law already says that it's unlawful to ride any bicycle through any park. And so I don't know if it needs to be different than that. I mean, if we just add those to that and then make some exceptions as needed. So I'm confused about why it would need to be different if we've already got this law in place for
So-
bicycle.
So staff's intent, the park code was developed in 1991, so a lot has changed since then. So we're going to be rewriting that essentially at some point. What this discussion will do is help to inform how that gets rewritten, and that might be a valid point of that it needs minor tweaks rather than large.
Oh, so you're gonna be rewriting 90.30.150?
Yes.
And Ryan, if I remember correctly, that code is very old before the existence of e-bikes.
Yeah, 1991.
Right, oh, yeah.
Yep.
But it prohibits bikes.
It prohibits any bicycle.
Yeah,
Except in designated areas,
yes, which we haven't designated.
which we haven't designated necessarily.
And we have not designated areas where bicycles can
No.
go.
So that's part of this conversation as well. Is takeaways to inform that future rule.
So we're not really taking anything away from the community at this point. I mean, they've never had it.
Well, but like during
But it hasn't
the
been
bike
enforced.
skills discussion, the question was already asked, well, can't I didn't ask this, can't I ride a bicycle in the trail area of Island Crest Park now? And the staff answer at that point was yes, because, and it isn't like it's specifically permitted, but it's not, nobody's paid attention to it because they didn't have the issue before. So if your intent, Ryan, is to get parameters here and then maybe make this part of a broader redrafting effort at some point, then I get it. But otherwise, I think you're literally correct, but practically, it's something that needs to be tightened.
This is a resetting exercise.
As people to plan, I saw your hand up and then Commissioner Markson.
Yes, I wanted to address the question, should e-bikes be regulated differently from other bikes within the parks? And I would say if we're talking only about class 1 and 2 e-bikes, my feeling is no, they should be treated uniformly. If you're permitted to use a human-only powered bicycle on a trail, then that should also apply to class 1 and 2 e-bikes. My reasoning for this is that I do have a couple of friends who are at least as old as I am, and they definitely proponents of the use of e-bikes, and it would be kind of a shame to limit their ability to use the e-bike as an extension of their own mobility in order to visit parks. That said, it may be that areas where we're currently permitting bicycle use should be re-examined, and in any case, I believe that they should be treated uniformly.
Commissioner Markson.
Yeah, I'm going back to the vote we just took on the class 3 bikes, and I would like to hear thoughts on. I'm having a hard time with that question because you can ride a class 3 e-bike. Well, I'm guessing I don't have a class 3 one. I have like a lower class one. I can ride it without the engine and with pedals, and I can ride it slowly. And I'm trying, unless I'm wrong on that for a class 3 e-bike, I don't see why we would not allow it when we would allow a class 2 or 1, when you can ride it just as slow as those other bikes. And maybe I'm interested in other people's opinions, or if I need to be corrected, let me know that.
Sarah, I'll respond to your question from my perspective. It's not a matter of can you ride it slow? It's a matter of how fast can you ride it and how big is and heavy is the bicycle. You could turn off your electric motor and pedal it. If you wanted, you could go really slow then. But that's not what people do. Even, to address a comment Jody made earlier, a lot of the kids that I've seen that are either on class 2 or class 3 bikes, they don't bother pedaling. They're using the throttle the whole time because it's way more fun and it's way easier. So it's not really a question of can you go slow, it's how fast can you go and how big and powerful is the bike? And do we want that type of machine on our park trails?
And so if, Rory, like someone commutes to work on their class 3 e-bike, and then on the weekends they go to Island Crest Park with their kids to go to the playground, take them to the playground, would they have to have a different bike?
No, they wouldn't have to. Because they can use the streets. They can put their kids in their car, in the back of their cargo bike, which is probably a class 3 bike, and drive them to the playground using city streets.
Yeah, I think that's where I just have as you can guess, I still have a hard time with the logic of cutting off class 3, but I totally get I appreciate the response, Rory. It just helps me think about it. Thanks. And I'm open to more comments. I'm just curious.
I might take this opportunity to move us to the second question. I think a lot of the conversation leads into the following questions, so very, very helpful. Clear as mud.
Okay, or something we can come back to.
Did I say 4 to 8 meetings?
I thought you said 10 to 12.
No, I honestly think this was helpful. The input on that question gives us a little bit of a pathway to move forward.
So some of the comments that we just made kind of are on the same vein of question 4. Do we want to hop into that since we were just talking about, which was that are there classes of e-bikes that should not be permitted in parks? We're kind of already talking about it, right? We just dive into it. Or take a break and come back to it. What do you think?
Well, that's the question we kind of took a vote on.
Yeah, I was kind of going to recommend scrapping this question.
Address the class 3. But we haven't talked about 1 and 2, and if there are certain trails we would permit 1 and 2 on or not, the soft surface trails versus paved trails. That would be kind of a subcategory.
Yeah,
under this.
yeah,
Maybe 1 and 2 are permitted, we didn't talk about it, and which trails would 1 and 2 be?
Yeah, which I think is a following questions.
That was the previous question.
Yeah.
So specifically, I think our question is as on the screen, just are there classes of e-bikes that we should not be permitting in parks or on trail?
I think one way that way to think about this is, should class 1 and class 2 e-bikes have the same regulations as human e-bikes?
Sorry, be the same as what? I couldn't hear what you said.
Should class 1 and class 2 e-bikes have the same regulations as regular human e-bikes?
Yes, I said earlier that I thought they should, and I can supply a little bit of my reasoning for that. That is because of the limitation to the 750-watt motor, there, the power that can be applied to the wheel is approximately equivalent to the output of a reasonably fit human being. So, based just on the maximum power output and the speed limit that's associated with those classes of bikes, I think it's reasonable to regulate them together. Yeah, enough said.
I have a question for Commissioner or Hildebrand.
Yes.
Thomas Hildebrand, or trustee. Is that right? Okay, I'm
Yes.
sorry. So did you say earlier that the class 2, that if you have the throttle going and then you start pedaling on top of that, that you can actually get quite a bit faster? Did I misunderstand?
That would be the class 3 bicycle.
That's class 3.
That
Okay.
that continues to supply power to the drivetrain after you surpass 20 miles an hour up to 28 miles an hour.
Okay, but if you're on a class 2 and you're pedaling as hard as you can and have the throttle, it's still only up to 20 miles an hour? Unless
Presumably,
you're going downhill or something?
the electric assist cuts out at 20 miles an hour. And I don't have personal experience with this, but
So you can go faster than 20, but after you're above 20, the assist will turn off. And so at that
Yes.
point, you have to either be going downhill, gravity powered, or pedaling hard.
as
in order
as
to
an
continue
unassisted
accelerating.
person on a bicycle at a full sprint, I can probably do 20 to 25 miles an hour on a reasonably flat trail, but on a rough trail or going up a hill, I couldn't possibly go more than 20 miles an hour. So
I'd be willing to take the position now, at least tentatively, that e-bikes should not be permitted on trails and parks. Unless there was a special circumstance, I realize this isn't Commissioner or Trustee Hildebrandt's view, but unless, less like Aubrey Davis is trumped by the state or something like that, no. No, Aubrey Davis is a paper or whatever it is, so I'd be willing to take that position because not just because of safety and potential environmental damage, but just the intricacy of, I know nothing about e-bikes, other than I've stayed off them purposefully. But just, I'm not criticizing you, but you said presumably you can't get over a certain thing. I mean, so there are things that are evolving. Let's just say there are things that are evolving, as I understand, in the e-bike thing. And I don't care. I don't want Mercer Island, in my mind, at this point, to be the laboratory for that. But again, I'm, still need to learn a lot more and think a lot more about it. But I don't want the. I think if I had to take a yes or no vote right now, I would probably say no e-bikes on trails and parks.
So Commissioner Cohen, you are actually answering the original question and the point of the meeting, which is a study session to determine whether electric bikes are allowed in parks and open spaces, and considerations below that. So, these questions are all, it seems that they all assume that we're allowing it, and then what type of, I don't know if we want to go back to that original question and say, do we want to allow it or not? So, we have one statement on the table that kind of takes us back to square one. If we're not allowing it, we don't need to discuss some of these subcategories, when and where and what type. So, yeah, that's kind of the original question, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this probably could have been the first question too, like, yes or no, and that sends us down a path, so to speak. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear other members' opinions and see if we are getting
Yeah,
closer to a consensus.
to note that this was really helpful, what you sent out, the regulations of other cities, what other cities are doing. And some have things completely in the parks, some have said, on some paved trails and whatnot. So there's a wide range of what other cities have done. Yeah, Councilmember Reynolds.
I just wanted to, without attempting to imply any policy should be throw a couple of facts. I think I'm probably the only person that rode an e-bike here tonight. Through a park on the way to get here on a class 2 e-bike. And just wanted, the comment that Trustee Hilbert, I think, was essentially correct. When you hit 20 miles an hour, you can still keep pedaling and you can go faster, but the motor's not helping you anymore. It basically shuts off when you hit 20. I will say though that pedaling an e-bike faster than 20 miles an hour on level or uphill ground is really hard because they're so much heavier than normal bikes. A highly trained athlete or a reasonably trained athlete can pedal a regular bike up to about 20 miles an hour, but it's hard to do on an e-bike. I'll also note I commute whenever I go to the office on my bike, and I'd say every day I get passed by at least a few bikers on the path, and most of them are non-electric bikes. Because I tend to cruise, non-electric, yeah, because I tend to cruise at a comfortable 10 to 12 miles an hour. And a lot of skilled bikers will ride 15 to 20 or 15 to 18 away. So I would encourage you to think about whether e-bike is the issue or whether speed is the issue. Because the regular bikes will often go much faster than these bikes.
Out of curiosity, which park did you ride?
Arcades.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's, I'm coming from Seattle, come through the park across Seattle to get here. And for what it's worth, I would also concede parks are very different. RB Davis is very definitely used by a lot of commuters going across the island from Bellevue to Seattle and back and forth. Mercerdale Park, we've gone around in circles, that's a different issue. No commuter rides through Mercerdale Park. I'll also note that the city has gotten a lot of complaints about bikers in Island Crest Park. And in particular, going up and down the hills in there. And many of those predate the prevalence of e-bikes. The regular bikes are going through that park at a speed that scares people that walk through that park. Justified or not, it's reality. So it's important to kind of consider these things comprehensively and think about effects, not just label.
And you bring up a good point of connectivity, that we need to have a solution that allows connectivity through the island, regardless of what we decide to figure out a way to balance.
Yeah, and it's quite possible, it's at least conceivable, you can write a regulation that allowed use of e-bikes on parks that provide connectivity, but doesn't on these little circle parks that we have in various places on the island. Something worth thinking about.
Yeah, I think Councilmember Reynolds is correct. If the maximum speed limit was 10 miles an hour and the bikes had governors, I don't know if we'd be having this discussion tonight, but you're exactly right. But to the question, I guess if I was to vote tonight, I'm leaning probably to a no for two reasons. One, I think from an enforcement perspective, trying to, as we talked about earlier, understand, class 1, 2, 3, and so forth, it's very difficult. So it's either it is or it isn't. And then secondly, as I look at this list of parks, most of the time you can get to all of these parks without any problem, although I think, again, Councilmember Reynolds makes up a good point about there's probably would have to be a few exceptions for connectivity kinds of issues. But most of the time you can get to these parks, park your e-bike kind of on the perimeter, do whatever you want to do in that park kind of thing. I'm not sure how many people go to physically just ride in a park. They use their either kind of bike, to get to the park as opposed to get into it. That's what I'm thinking tonight.
While I kind of emotionally agree with what Commissioner Cohen has said, as far as the policy, and you can't get simpler than that if that's what we're looking for. A simple policy saying no e-bikes. Practicality is we have parks like Aubrey Davis that would have to be made exceptions. There aren't many though. There aren't many that would have to be made exceptions. So in looking over the list that you sent out, the policy that I liked was King County. King County says it permits categories 1 and 2 on regional trails, paved paths, and other paths where bicycles are permitted. So it keeps the two together. And it doesn't allow Cat 3 under any circumstance. And that to me is a workable policy because you could take the step of designating where bicycles are appropriate. And include places like Aubrey Davis Park, but the vast majority of park trails.
Those are my thoughts exactly, that they would be permitted only on paved trails. And I would add to that for connectivity. And it would fall under that type of trail that we talked about, which is connecting. So Aubrey Davis, this would mean that Mercer Loop is not included. It's not even surplus for connectivity.
So that was gonna be my question, just of a clarifying standpoint. So thinking about Luther Burbank Park, which has a mix of different types of surfacing.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be
Would not
permitted
be, because you're not connecting.
under the idea of connectivity. Okay.
So do we have a question regarding the types of trails that we're going to permit bicycle travel on?
Yeah, I guess it would fall under that trail. But we talked about those different trail categories, right? And if they're just designated on the green map. So there's two ways to say it, for connectivity or only the paved trails. Which is what I think is looking as shared use trails. Prohibited except for the paths that they designate.
Connectivity criterion is going to be a problem, at least from some people's point of view, for Island Crest Park. Because you don't have to go on there, but if you want to get from 84th, or, let's say basically from the south end QFC up to Lansdowne Lane, somebody would say that's a connectivity issue, even though you can go on Island Crest. In fact, it's part of it's designated, well, on 84th, it's anyway.
That's always been a difficult location. It's come up before. And the idea of making one of the paths a designated bike path, anyone can use it, but if you're on a bike, that's the path that you need to go on. So that would be one of those designated trails. So I guess rather than say connectivity, you would say bikes are prohibited, e-bikes are prohibited, except for on the designated. Commissioner Markson?
I think I have to step away from this meeting in about a minute, so I just wanted to weigh in case we get to the point where we're, just voting on an opinion, on everyone's opinion. And I think what Commissioner Westberg described as King County rules or guidance probably most closely aligns with what I would picture would be workable in our parks. And it's like part of my thinking behind it is I don't see e-bikes as different as bikes in such a clear way. I do get some of the concerns around it, but I think making a distinction is problematic for some reasons that were discussed tonight. And I think that e-bikes, have a place, and bikes obviously in our parks, and the use of this, people should be able to use them in parks. I guess I'll just leave it at that. So With that, I will watch the recording and talk to y'all next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Bye.
So Chair Ete or Vice Chair Burseth, do you have comments on e-bikes in parks or not, or we haven't heard from you?
Yes, I would like to say, I think, it is rather complicated with these overlapping trail uses. And the issue of connectivity, for example, might not be as, clear cut as Mountains to Sound Greenway, but I tend to think of all of the different neighborhood paths and trails that our children use to go to and from school. So I know, like, for example, Ellis Pond is the neighborhood park in the community where I live, and also Commissioner Markson lives. And we have a lot of kids who ride their bikes to the high school, to Island Park, and then down to the middle school. And a fair number of them, I wouldn't say all of them, but a fair number of them are e-bikes. And I think Sam has told me in the past that the trails primarily through our park are actual right-of-way. So with a right-of-way designation, my assumption, because of their connectivity from one part of the neighborhood to another part of the neighborhood that isn't otherwise passable, would seemingly make sense as a special case to allow for that transportation option for kids. So I don't want to go ahead and say that we should ban them from parks entirely, because I think it is a method of transportation that many families rely upon for their kids to commute to and from school. And I think the same can be said for Pioneer Park as well, even though we do have the northeastern quadrant with the asphalt path, because of the kind of spotty nature of where the crosswalks are and how heavily trafficked Island Crest Way is in the morning. I think it is actually sometimes safer for kids who are on the west side to cut through Pioneer Park on the perimeter trails on their way down to the middle school. And I think that's a really important consideration.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to put in my words on the use of bicycles inside of parks. And so, assuming that they're all lumped together, I think there may be places where there are soft surface trails, adding to what Trustee Ate has said. There are soft surface trails where bicycle traffic makes sense, and not necessarily restricting that to thoroughfares if the usage of the bikes provides positive recreational activity and does not impact other uses. I'm thinking particularly of number of pleasurable hours I've spent cycling through the Southeast Quad while horses are not there. And I think it would be kind of a shame to just toss that out. So in considering, when we come to the point of considering what types of trails are going to permit bicycle traffic, I wouldn't restrict that to being hard surface trails. And also we may want to think about places where recreational uses of bikes are appropriate.
To clarify, are you talking about e-bikes or bicycles?
I'm assuming that we're treating them uniformly. If we do make a distinction, then I can see where it would make sense in some cases to say that e-bikes are not allowed. For example, if we don't force ourselves to consider e-bikes to be equivalent to human-powered bicycles, I would say it doesn't really make sense to have e-bikes in the bike skills area. But if they're all lumped together, then you would say you would accept e-bikes there just for the sake of uniformity.
else have thoughts? Am I missing a hand somewhere online? Commissioner Cohen and then.
Yeah, I just had a question. Rory, when you were summarizing the King County one, you said something about regional trails and paved pathways within park areas, and then you said something else about regular bicycles.
And other paths where bicycles are permitted.
Where's that?
Be allowed to call them.
I think I added that.
Yeah, that's why I was scratching my
Yeah.
head metaphorically, because you added that, and that was sort of, that was not where I was coming from, because I was willing to prohibit, with limited exception, I was going to prohibit class 1 and 2 e-bikes.
Well, this is the reverse of your question. Do you prohibit or do you allow? So in some cases, and some of the other discussion around the table is there'd be places where we would allow bicycle use within our park system. These public trails, even though they're soft surface because they connect neighborhoods or they connect pathways to for kids to get safely to school and that kind of thing. So there's a permitted side as well as a.
Now I understand what you're saying. You're saying that it's sort of, the King County one sort of assumes that you can use a bicycle on those. A regular bicycle on those things. Okay, I thought I had missed something that was in there, or did you try to sit by it?
Commissioner McCarthy?
Thank you. I feel like e-bikes are here to stay, and I don't feel like it's realistic to think that we can just do a carte blanche. No, we shouldn't have them in places. I do think that we should be looking at the places where no bike should be. And when I think about the skate park comments, even though that is paved, I feel like that's not the best place for bicycles, or, unless they're like little kids learning how to ride, for example. But that would be a paved place where I think we would be wanting to look at discouraging bikes from being things.
I'll just respond to that briefly. That would be like a special facility, so that would be rules around the skate park, the bike skills area, playgrounds would be different, separate of this policy. We do make rules around what is allowed in the use of those type of facilities. Next slide.
Okay, so looks like we made good progress on most of these questions, right? With the exception of the scooters. And, sorry, Councilmember Becker and Commissioner Bratton, did you have a chance to comment?
I'm good.
Okay. So, just the areas, right? The specific area like turf, playground, and then the scooter question, so there's the remaining two.
No, your count is correct.
Okay. Do we want to power through or take a 5-minute break? How are people?
My recommendation is let's go through these last two. I think that's gonna give us some guidance to prepare for the following meeting when we would come back. Again, with PD being able to start talking, a lot of this started to talk about enforcement and how do we do it? That's the future conversation. So we'll be able to provide, if you do this, this is what it looks like. If you do this, this is what it looks like. So we can dig a little deeper there.
A couple hands for 5-minute break. Can you do a quick 5-minute break and then come back to those two questions and wrap it up? 5 minutes, please.
Maybe get out of this room that's like 150 degrees.
Get a mandate.
Are you ready?
Oh, there we go. Thanks, Raven.
Here we are back for a couple of maybe questions and closing out.
So we had a chance to talk, and there's a couple, we're gonna skip to a couple of questions just that were generated by staff here in the last couple of minutes, just to move us forward so that we can get some clear ideas from the boards, where we should be headed. So if you want to throw that one up there. So should class 1 and 2 e-bikes be prohibited from parks and trails, but then establish some exemptions from that?
That's my view, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes. So if, for the sake of discussion, if prohibiting from parks and trails, but establishing exemptions, if you're not for that, just give us a thumbs down so that we know. If you,
Is that the same as saying permitted on a limited basis? In limited cases?
this would be, the vast majority of parks and trails would be prohibited. The way I'm
Yeah.
thinking about this would be prohibited, except with exceptions. So there would be, and I think some of those exceptions might be the Aubrey Davis Trail, or connectivity, and those would be things we would bring back at the next, depending on the response to this question, we would return with what some of those exceptions may be.
So by exemptions, you mean allowances?
Allowances, yeah.
Okay, so prohibited except for certain allowances.
Prohibited except where permitted.
So if you want to answer yes, you go thumbs up, is that it, or?
Yes, thumbs up if you think e-bike should be prohibited
Okay.
except where permitted.
Actually, you got a question online.
Vice Chairperson also has.
There we go.
Who would we have with a hand up online?
That was the person.
We'd have to take
So,
off
so,
that.
so Vice Chairperson?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm voting for some reason my picture is gone. You can't see me.
Okay, and if online wants to do a thumbs up. Two down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up.
There we go.
6 up, 3 down, 6 up. 2, 3 abstentions, is that what I'm seeing?
Okay. Okay, that helps us. We're not holding anybody to this by any stretch, but this helps us to develop a policy statement for the next meeting, as well as what some of those exemptions may be.
Commissioner Conan.
When you're working on the exemptions, on the issue of connectivity, if that's one, consider whether connectivity ought to be that, the exclusive means of getting from one place to another one. And I'm not sure if that quite works or not, but I'm thinking again of Island Crest Park as an example. But and somewhere, how do you tighten up connectivity?
We'll come with some options, an array of options that we can work through and talk through.
And maybe considering right of ways as well. Without getting too deep in at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I just, because I made the comment earlier about class 3, because your question initially was like, should there be any restrictions on e-bikes? And I said, yes, I think there should be at least some restrictions on class 3. I don't know. I wasn't trying to say like we should not allow them anywhere. Again, I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, but like if we're just talking about major arterials, like are we by default saying like you still can't ride a class 3 through paved Aubrey Davis on a regional trail? Like do we have people on class 3 trails coming from Seattle and going to Bellevue, and are we saying that's not allowed here? And is that going to be problematic? Will we try to restrict that?
So I may have read this actually different than others now that I'm thinking about it. I was thinking exemptions could be class 3 as well. So
Okay.
not just in the park spaces, but the type of of bike, if that,
Got it.
I might,
Okay, as long as you come. back-
Rory's agreeing with me, so at least one other person was.
As long as you come
Thinking
back
the
and
same
propose something, if you have got a menu of options, then people can decide. I mean, I don't think people should have a class 3 bike on dirt trails around the city, but I wasn't trying to say there might not be a circumstance like that.
And again, this is first look, so
Yeah.
we might come back to it and say, oh, here's the work there.
I think one of the reasons I gave a thumbs up on that is because I was involved in helping disseminate a lot of the information that the city had produced in April and throughout the PTA and parents, and there was ongoing confusion. People did not understand what that information meant. They didn't understand what it said. And so I do think I think Dawn, you've mentioned wanting to have simplicity. I think that what you've said, like this approach is the most simple approach, so that you can't have it there unless we allow it. It just is much easier to be able to communicate that. And for kids to understand.
The communication element,
Yeah.
the education portion, absolutely.
With our remaining time, I wanted to briefly reflect on e-scooters. And I'm gonna share the question that was in the packet on the screen.
Ignorance here. The e-scooters have a class rating that will tell you the other maximum speed. Some of them seem to go really fast, but I don't
A
know.
lawful e-bike has max.
Lawful e-scooter or e-bike?
E-scooter, sorry. E-scooter.
20 miles an hour. Okay, thank you.
Oh, are there scooters that?
There's an operational maximum of 15 miles an hour. I'm not entirely familiar with the operational maximum.
Do we know if there's modifications that you are doing this with it? E-scooters, I definitely see them going, but.
There are e-scooters that exist that go faster than 20 miles per hour. That is, I think, those are unlawful. So that is outside of the scope of this question.
And we are already regulating e-scooters
The state
more stringently than e-bikes because of the state regulation, right?
When you say more stringently.
Meaning that they have to be on the road, they can't be on the sidewalks or the soft trails. Like the state already regulates that, correct? Which I found that really interesting, that they would regulate e-scooters more stringently than the bikes, would be that the state hasn't regulated. So, I mean, so I guess they already are regulated differently. Do we want it to be the case moving forward? Question.
Yeah, I guess my question is, if we're talking about permitting e-scooters on certain trails, or I'm sorry, e-bikes on certain trails right now, which was the previous question. Should e-scooters be allowed as well, or should we treat them differently? Should we pull e-scooters out of the conversation? This is the park zone, open space zone conversation we had where you start looking at two different things that maybe branch off, but.
When I read the state law, it sounds to me like e-scooters cannot be ridden in parks. There's no situation in which an e-scooter can be ridden in a park. Am I misunderstanding this?
Per state law, yes, but
Okay, so
Is that a state park then? When you say state law, is it for all parks or just state parks?
not parks, just state law in general.
I don't read it that way. I mean, I read it this and they could be on the operating state.
is that a sidewalk?
It's not a
It's
sidewalk.
not a sidewalk, it's a trail.
It's not a sidewalk. It's a multi-purpose trail. Paved trail.
It's a good point. Yeah.
So it could be. So I think we have to look, we wouldn't necessarily grant the same exceptions, or the
Right.
same permitting to scooters, but they have to be part of the discussion because they can be used on. the roads.
Yes, on paved trails,
Yeah.
correct.
Well, yeah, I would say we definitely should include them because I guess I think of, if we make stringent e-bike rules and don't include scooters, then guess what?
Yeah.
Water runs downhill kind of thing. So, yeah, I know exactly what all that should be, but I think, yes, they need to be part of the discussion.
The minimum ride rate.
If I can make a comment, I think they should be part of the conversation, but they should be their separate own thing as their own category. And not just lumped in with e-bikes, but be separate as in the rules for e-scooter are. Thanks.
Yes, I would second that. For perspective, the wheels on an e-scooter are tiny compared to those of a bicycle. And so they would do a lot more damage to a soft surface trail than a bicycle. And that's one good reason to treat them differently, but they should be part of the discussion.
Just going to encourage everyone to try to put a broad perspective on this without intending disrespect to anyone here. I think all of us are of a certain age, maybe towards the older end of the spectrum, as some of us more than others, like me, but the world's changing. A lot of young kids today don't get driver's licenses. And a lot of them in the bigger cities, especially, are depending on scooters for that's how they get around. And bikes to a certain extent also. And let's make sure we consider the needs of these people too. Not just our own ones.
How do you feel?
Inundated with information.
Yes. You want to go over next steps real quick?
Yeah, we've been wonderful conversation from this evening. Brian and I are going to rewatch this recording probably 3 or 4 times, and come up with a policy that hopefully accurately applies for each workplace. We'll then come back to you with what sounds like a menu of options, on finalizing that station, and then.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Amelia. I think those of us
We
at
can't
home
hear.
are having a really hard time hearing you.
Okay, we will take all of your feedback from this evening. Can you hear me now? Yes, okay. We'll take all of your feedback from this evening, and come back to you with a menu of options based off of what was discussed tonight. It sounds like we'll probably need at least 2 or 3 meetings to be able to get that policy statement, that guidance finalized and approved from you, and then we'll take that back to council with formal regulations. Anything to add to that?
Raven will be in contact on another meeting. I think the special meeting format seems to work very well. It worked very well for other projects, so we'll be in contact. December would be sort of the next opportunity, I think. December tends to be the craziest month of the year to try to get everybody together, so we do have a runway, so we'll reach out with a variety of options that will include January as well, and just see what works for the vast majority of the board. But again, thank you. I think this was tremendously helpful to kick off this process. So thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
You wanna adjourn?
Yes. The next special joint Parks and Recreations Commission and Open Space Conservancy Trust meeting date is yet to be determined. There being no other business to come before the Parks and Recreation Commission and the Open Space Conservancy Trust, the time now is 7:01 p.m. and the meeting is adjourned. As a reminder to commissioners and trustees, please stay seated until the city staff has terminated the broadcast. Good evening, and thank you for joining us.